Okay, just a quick video. Recently in the news over the last couple of days, it's been reported that the solicitor for Michael Stone has received a 4-page confession from Levi Bellfield that he in fact was the killer of the Russell family, Elise, Lynn and Megan, and then seriously injuring Josie back in 1996 in Chillenden, something I talked about before. I've never believed that Michael Stone, the man convicted for that, I've never believed he's guilty. There's a lot of forensic evidence and none of it points to him. He doesn't look a thing like the photo fit. It could have been him, but then again there are, 68 million people in these aisles. Could have been any of us. There was nothing that pointed to him other than a psychiatrist phoning in and saying, this dude's a psychopath, which he may well be, and this dude's a drug user. Yeah, there's plenty of those too. There was no evidence against him. The only evidence was a jail cell confession by someone who has subsequently been arrested for murder. In fact, convicted of murder and is in prison, Damien Daley. And, interestingly, one of Damien Daley's mates reported in the prison journal, I forget what it's called now, is it Inside Time? Whatever, there's a charity that does like a newsletter, I suppose, or journal for people inside. And anyway, someone reported in that, I was chatting to Damien, and he admitted he made it all up just because he wanted to get away from the prison for a little bit to talk to the police. It's a little bit of an outing, I suppose, and they're pampering you a bit, giving you some better food perhaps because you're telling them what they want to hear and all that stuff. And so we got another prisoner saying, he admitted to me he was lying. And yet, unfortunately, the gullible fools on the jury believe this person. Even the judge in his summing up said, Damien Daley is a known liar, but that doesn't mean he's necessarily lying now about Michael Stone. It was preposterous. Absolute miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. And obviously Kent police don't want to reopen it because, then they've got 2 unsolved murders and 1 attempted murder on the cards, and they'd have to admit that they framed this dude just because they didn't like him, because he was a bit of a burglar and, easy person to frame, very easy person to frame. But anyway, going back to the confession. So, for a long time now, there's been talk that did Bellfield do it? Why? Because Bellfield liked to bash people with a hammer. He did it to a lot of people, especially women, but not just women. He bashed his own flatmate with a hammer, and the police laughed it off and said, even though his flatmate nearly died, by the way, they're like, there wasn't enough evidence. Okay, well, the flatmate had just had an argument with Bellfield, marched out in a huff, having insulted him, called him a fat idiot, or slightly stronger terms, actually, but emphasising the fact he was fat. And then Bellfield stalked him down the steps and smashed him with a hammer. And the police didn't bother taking any action, probably because they thought, well, bunch of, low-lifes, I don't care about either of them. Absolutely disgusting, their behaviour in relation to all of that. But anyway, thankfully Colin Sutton came on the scene, and he finally cracked the case of Millie Dowler, and that opened up. In fact, let's go well. In fact, it was before that. He'd already cracked the case of Amélie Delgrange, and then Marcia MacDonald and Kate Sheedy, and then he made the link to Millie Dowler. Subsequently, Bellfield got sentenced to 2 whole life tariffs. He will never get out of prison. Subsequently, he has converted to Islam. My understanding is that's because you get better food in prison if you're allegedly a Muslim. I am not convinced that Bellfield is telling the truth here. I'd like to believe it's him, because otherwise it's slightly scary that there's someone this evil knocking around, not been apprehended. But the problem I have is that when that murder happened, on the day it happened, back in 1996, his then partner says, look, I know he could do it, I know he's capable of doing it, but that was my birthday. That is my birthday. And I know Levi did not leave me all that day, because he was one of these kind of charmers, He used to sort of make his partner lie naked on the floor of the kitchen and beat her if she moved and all this kind of stuff. But then another day he could be all charming and stuff. So, and on her birthday, he pampered her. And so apparently there's no chance that he left her at all that day. I've got to, I want to believe this confession is true, or at least will be believed to be true, because obviously Michael Stone didn't do it, and he's served something like 26 years for a murder that he was framed for. But, in my opinion, I should say. However, I found it hard to believe that this confession is true, and I think it's probably just Bellfield having a bit of fun, because he's bored in prison. He loves screwing around with Michael Stone, because he doesn't like him. I believe they were even in the same prison and crossed paths and stuff. And I suspect what he'll do is he'll let the thing progress a little bit. Michael Stone gets his hopes up, finally I'm going to be released. And then he'll say, actually, I made it all up. And he'll give the evidence to say, this is proof I didn't do it and I was just screwing with you. That's unfortunately what I believe is going to happen. But hey, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? With Bellfield, though, we certainly should look into him for more murders. Apparently in this confession, alleged confession, he has admitted to committing another murder, which I haven't researched yet. And if that's true, well, maybe he has decided he wants to come clean. I don't think it's because of any desire, to see justice done to himself or anything like that. But it could just be he'd like the notoriety, because he's getting on a bit now, and, why not take credit for all your other murders? I don't know. I mean, personally, I believe he murdered his girlfriend when he was only about 14, because she suspiciously got strangled. And as well, I think there's a good chance that in my locality, Melanie Hall, a very good candidate for. He knew the Bristol and Bath area very well. He used to frequent pubs and clubs and everything else. He could charm people. He'd be very charming when you first met them. He had a car. She was killed by head injuries. It would appear a trophy was taken, which indicates a serial killer. That's another one to look into. But as for this confession, we wait and see. But, hopefully there will be some justice for Michael Stone and justice for the family, because although at the time their father said, I'm glad justice has been done when Michael Stone was convicted, but it would seem subsequently, I've not seen the interview, but I've heard it secondhand, that he subsequently expressed his doubts, because I don't know if he still is, but he certainly was GP. He's a scientist, and he knows that the forensic evidence, there would have been some if Stone had done it, some kind of drug-addled lunatic bashing people with a hammer and tying them up with a shoelace that was covered in DNA. There would be evidence that would link it to him. He wouldn't have been a master criminal. And I think, the dad's expressed doubts. I don't think Josie truly remembers, but I don't think she's ever spoken out on it. And who can blame her? You don't really want to recall that stuff to mind, quite frankly. It's such a terrible thing. But we'll wait with interest, but I wouldn't be holding my breath, because Kent Police love the fact that the case is shut. Just in addition to that, Stone could be paroled if he just admitted he was guilty. But he won't admit he's guilty because he isn't. That in itself, I believe, is powerful evidence that he's innocent, because otherwise, just say you're guilty and get paroled, He's served so long now. I'm not saying that Stone's a nice man, he was obviously well into his heroin, and he was stealing to fuel his habit, I should say. And he did know the Chillenden area a little bit. But there was just no evidence against him. And if that can happen just because you live a lifestyle of a vagrant and a drug misuser, well, frankly, what's our justice system come to? Come on. So anyway, we'll watch and we'll wait and we'll see.